All right. Hello and welcome back to the Digital Twin Podcast with your hosts, Omar and Hari. Today we have a spotlight episode with a special guest from Singapore. Please welcome Professor Satar Bhawani. He's the CEO of the Center of Executive Education and Disruptive Leadership Institute. He's also the author of two books. The first one, Transforming the Next Generation Leaders, Developing Future Leaders for a Disruptive, Digital Driven Era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And the second book, most recently, Disruptive Leadership. Welcome to
Thank you
the
so much.
podcast, Mr. Bawani.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you,
welcome.
Hari and
Great to
Omar,
have
for
you.
having me here. It's my pleasure. And very early morning.
Well, we're very excited because it's a
Yeah,
very near and dear topic to both of us, and you are an expert at this. So, to begin, maybe you can maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to how you got to where you are. To us, that's very intriguing. Your
yeah,
journey,
sure,
so
sure.
that'd
I
be a
started,
great start for us.
in healthcare industry, back in 1979, 1980. So it was quite a long time ago. As a sales rep, sales representative, doing medical healthcare devices, pharmaceutical. Then decided to, after 15 years, decided to go into professional services, training, consulting with Hay Group, one of the largest management consulting, human resource consulting. Now is part of Conferry, yeah, one of the global leadership development firm. And then I move on to an organization which does on executive coaching, Forum Corporation in Boston. So I was there for a while. Then was doing more on leadership development for high potential leadership, looking at leadership transition, help leaders, coaching them to be future leaders. So these are young, emerging leaders. So that was my initial foray into the leadership development, helping leaders to prepare for the future. And then, of course, then I was with Mercer, then DBM, many other global consulting firm until, all along in professional services, leadership development, focusing on future leadership. So that's my area of interest. And since then, besides doing, executive coaching, which is one-on-one, highly personalized, contextualized leadership development intervention, I also does a leadership workshop masterclass, helping C-suite leaders to work together in tech team to help them to navigate tomorrow's challenges and how to be able to prepare the leadership team to manage disruption, in the future, and especially in the world of the in the fourth industrial revolution that we are in today. So that's how I started. So I was not um, consultant all my life, but the first 15 years was a business leader. But I'm still running business. I'm a practitioner. I'm a professor with various university,
Okay.
in disruptive leadership with the IPE, a management school in Paris and London. I'm also
Okay.
the Asia University in Kuala Lumpur, the professor for management in organizational behavior, and I was on the board of the Curtin University in Australia, where I did my undergraduate, and also adjunct professor there. So over the years, I've been an adjunct professor for more than 20, 25 years. And that is more a passion to teach adult learners, not students, but most of my students are adult learners, CEOs, senior business leaders who wants to undertake to go through, leadership or executive development themselves. And that's how I learn from them. So that's how my journey is, from a business, moving into consulting and now teaching, but all together. So in a way, it's a unique combination from academia, business, and consulting. So all three into one. It's a long answer to a short question.
So it seems so that it seems like
No,
you
that's
yeah. So
yeah.
it seems like you have a lot of stories and
Mm.
a lot of perspectives from a lot of
Yeah.
previous students, C-suite. So you have a good idea what challenges they're facing and how to help address with different
Yeah.
aspects. It seems, and it would you say that most of the the effort has been around organizations that are larger, startups. How would you describe the the overall, blend of that? Because I think in the world of disruption, we see to have a startup, mentality coming in and really trying to disrupt the big dogs and the big organizations in our industry. And I think what I'm kind of getting from your books, that how do, the disruptive times, right, the disruptors out there, how do you handle, how do
Yeah.
you become agile, how do you really play in this
Yeah.
space,
No,
right?
first of all, Omar, the my work encompass from startup to small medium business, or in Singapore we call it small medium enterprise (SME), and to large MNC global like Pfizer, the Citigroup, um, uh, GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, or Boeing, General Electric. So it's diverse, very diverse. Uh, the challenges are similar, not the same, but similar. And one of the biggest challenge I would say is to help leaders to prepare their successor or future leaders. It's part of, and I learned something from the late Jack Welch, from the legendary CEO from General Electric. It's something which I met him back in 2000 in New York, and something I learned very profound. He says that the role of a leader, and it was in a convention. He said that the role of a leader is to develop other leaders, and GE is known for the GE Crottonville Leadership
Yeah.
Center. And what I learned from him, very profound, that you are not successful until you're able to ensure the success of your successor, or to ensure that you prepare your future leaders. This is one thing that I found, whether you're MNC, SME, startup, we tend to forget. We tend to focus on ourselves as leader, and we forget that what is important is how do we prepare our successor, and how do we help them to be successful in the future. So these are the high potentials, emerging leaders and so forth. So the what you asked me, what the challenges, the biggest challenges, the one, as I said, to find prepare for future leaders. The second, my research in the Leadership Disruptive Time, the book that was published in July last year during the pandemic, when I was, the research before the book was published has been around for 5 years. And before that, in 2019, in July, the first book that was focusing on Industry 4.0 was the Transforming the Next Generation of Leaders in Industry 4.0. So that research looked at what are the challenges, exactly as I was saying, when we are facing with the confluence of the advanced technology, when we are looking at not only the internet, the big data, the blockchain technology, and how do we artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so forth at the forefront, in your organization, in doctor, how do you learn, how do you integrate, what do you need to do? And that the challenges are similar because all of them do not have the right mindset, or I call it the disruptive mental agility. you know, it can be an MNC, it can be SME, it can be a
Mhm.
startup. All of them face the same problem. How do we disrupt the way we think? And this is where the pandemic, I see a lot of blessing. I mean, this is something I go going around all my for the last past year. I would say since February, I've been doing exactly a year. I've been doing more than 100 over webinars, talks, interviews, and I say this very clearly: the pandemic actually, in my view, well, many people may have a different opinion, but I think it's a blessing in the sense that it helps us to be grounded, that to understand that a lot of things that we do not know what we do not know, and
Yeah.
a lot of things that has happened, making us better prepared for the next pandemic, the next disruptive challenge. And it's going to be more. And I can tell you, based on my research, it's going to be more, much more. And if you heard Bill Gates' interview, even 2015, this pandemic should not be a surprise. But we hear again and again leaders, both political and business leaders, keep on using the word unprecedented, saying that this is, they're not prepared, and they blame
Yeah.
on, this is a black swan event. Is it really a black swan event? And I always debate that with a lot of my client, with my interviewer, with the various other subject matter expert. I guess you're familiar with the Black Swan, Nassim Taleb, yeah, the Black Swan event. So there's the two pro. Is
Hmm.
it really? I think there are
Yeah.
signs because the world was preparing for the H1N1 in the US. You know what went through H1N1. We all know about Ebola. So there are a lot of signs that this, and you know
Right.
the biological warfare, and this is going to happen between the bigger forces between China and the US, you know, and in or India or Israel or in many other countries, and this is bound to happen. And that's why I'm saying we can be prepared. You must be prepared to face more such pandemics.
So that's a very
Right.
interesting point, Harry, because I think we mentioned that about, you
Mm.
talk about disruptive leadership, in traditional organizations and business strategy and planning, we look at a horizon of 2 to 3 to 5 years. But when we're talking about disruptive leadership, we have to be a little bit more agile. It looks like it's more short
Mm.
term focused. That, when we talk about the leadership skills of bringing your
Yeah.
organization on a vision and mission, how quickly that changes and how you build that cohesiveness with an organization can be a very good challenge. I mean, in this day and age, it seems, right? I mean, you laid out the pandemic is a perfect example of how quickly everyone just loses
No,
their
Omar,
bearings
exactly what you
sometimes.
just said. That what is lack is not about short term or long term. The key consideration here are people ready. Do you have what it takes to manage those challenges? It can appear any time of the a day. It can be whether 1 month horizon or 6 month, 1 year, in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. The question is the disruptive mental agility or the set of what I call the disruptive leadership competency. Another exactly,
You had
exactly. So,
listed
so
Yeah,
six
do
I
leaders
saw
have
that.
those
competencies,
Yeah.
six
right? Yeah.
competency? And
Yeah.
the underpinning, as you mentioned, Omar, correctly, is the agility, mental agility, resource agility, whether they have the social capital, agility to maneuver. And the most important number one is developing the cognitive readiness, the mental agility, the innovation, the ability to disrupt the status quo, the ability to think through the problem before you devise a solution. So my question is this: are leaders really ready? Are we providing leaders with the right set of skills, the development opportunities to prepare them for such pandemic? So it's not matter of, you're right. It can be a short term. It can be something that's happening now, and it's about critical thinking, not
Yeah.
creative thinking, not strategic thinking. Because those we know what to do. We need to think out of the box, try to brainstorm. And we talk about strategic thinking along. No, it's
Interesting.
about critical thinking. Can we look at the
Yeah.
information? Can we discern, have a ability to separate between facts and fiction, or today world of fake news is so important. How do we evaluate information? How do we assess those information to help us to develop alternative hypothesis solution to solve the problem? Because if you're not able to do that first, we cannot solve the problem. So right now, what is happening? People try to jump and solve the problem. So when we hear the word during the pandemic, the one, if you can
Yeah.
Google it, you see the one most common word that we use: unprecedented. So the question is,
They overuse that word. I have to be honest with you. That word
and
almost
I
is
blame the
like nothing
politician
anymore.
also. The politician used that word because to escape scrutiny. Oh, sorry, no, we cannot do anything much. What can we do? Okay, we'll come up with some financial, fiscal measures. We come up with all these things. We tried. We tried. This never been done before. Rubbish, bullshit. I mean, what is important? Have we prepared? And if you listen to Bill Gates TED Talk, I think you know what I'm talking about, and he's talking about this, and I fully agree
Yeah.
with Bill
Hmm.
Gates.
Yeah.
I think this is something what I blame organizations, both public, government, private, non-profit, any organization. Do we develop our leaders to face? I'm not talking about a pandemic. It can be anything. Industry 4.0 is a classical example. When you look at the confluence of the technologies, the advanced technology, internet has been around for a long time. But if you look at the internet of today, if you talk about the web based technologies, and since in I would say 95 during the the browser, it all started the browser war with the Netscape, Microsoft. And I was in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And back then, I was fortunate. I was Golden Gate University. I did my master's, but I was very fortunate. I was in the middle of all this. I was in San Jose, and but I experienced it. When I come to Singapore, people say, "Oh, okay, in the region, people think, oh no, well, it's still a long way to go. This is not something." I said, no. I said, this is, and when the dot-com bust happened, that was when I started to ask myself, what is going on in 2000? 2000, I don't know, you're still, both of you are very young. I don't know whether you remember the dot-com bust. For me, I'm just,
Yeah,
I was
well,
here.
but
I was
let me
definitely
tell
here.
you, for me, it started back in the 80s during the oil crisis. And then the most profound disruption for me was in 1997, 98, when the Asian financial crisis in Bangkok started, from Bangkok, Thailand, to Malaysia, Singapore, and the region. And it was Asian, especially. It was in the financial sector. It was the first time I was with an organization called Hay Group. And I was looking at leaders. They're struggling. Many of them struggling. They don't know how to manage, and that leads to a lot of. But that disruption was focusing on the financial services, especially in Asia. Of course, then you look at dot com to 2000. What happened in
Right.
2000 was the dot com. This over inflated. You look at the overpriced startup, the hype. Gone. And then that's where then we have in Asia, we have another crisis, disruption, the SARS, the predecessor to the COVID-19. And I was in China. Yeah. Before H1N1, it was SARS, was 2003, 2004, and it was focusing mostly in China, Singapore, Taiwan, Taiwan, and this Hong Kong. And of course, now we have, then we have the GFC, 2008, 2009. And I'll tell you a lot of stories later if you get examples where this disruption is really the GFC, the global financial crisis. And fantastic, a lot of stories. I will tell you, leaders are struggling. CEO, biggest organization that I've worked with, coming to me and saying, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to do it. It never
So let me ask a
that's
question
a very
on that,
interesting
though.
piece there. Yeah, go ahead, Hari.
Yeah. No, my question is probably around what you just said about the large organizations. And you said you consulted with the CEOs of large organizations across many industries, right? And what we see today, even you look at any tech companies, San Francisco, or look at any industry for that matter, the ones that are disrupting the industries are the smaller ones. And obviously they seemingly have a certain breed of leaders. And I have worked for the smallest company I personally work for is 2 billion, and so I know how large companies work. So do you see special set of challenges that leaders face in large organizations that have embedded culture, and do they need something special? I mean, are those leaders something you can build on or train and coach because you're in that business, right? Or is it something where you
have to come from
start
that
from the top
culture,
and
right? Like,
the board
hey,
says,
we need
listen,
a new
guys,
leader, or can we train
we
one?
got a clean house.
Yeah, we got a clean house, or we have to bring in a disruptive leader, right? I mean, this is the answer. Everyone's trying to figure out, is it possible to be a disruptive leader? Can you train?
And I see both sides of the equation, and I see companies doing both, and it's almost
excellent
like they don't know
question,
what
guys.
to do.
I think one of the things, in back, I can't remember, there was an interview by one of the leading magazines, the Tetler. The question I was asked is similar, but that was back in 2005, 2006, was this, what would be the or rather my perspective about the startup? What can we learn from startup? So between startup and the MNCs, the global enterprise. So my my point of view at that time was say, look, the CEOs of large organizations, large enterprise, could learn a few things from startup founders, startup leaders. Number one is about agility. Of course, we always say, oh, when you're small, it's easier, you can move, you get more agile, nimble, you can maneuver. It's true. But what is important is about the disruptive mindset. If you look at the innovation-driven organization, whether we're talking about Uber, Google. If you look at all the latest Netflix, all the latest, some of the latest startup, what is common is the
Yeah.
founder, the passion, the creativity, the
Mhm.
culture of innovation driven excellence, the exactly, and the
Top down.
ability to accept they don't have all the answers, and this is where I would say
Yeah.
some of the startup that I work with, the CEOs acknowledge that they may not be a good administrator, they may not be a good CEO, and you see many examples, whether Netscape,
Mhm.
whether even Steve Jobs himself in the earlier part before he was fired. I'm talking about the first when he found John
Hmm.
Scully to be the CEO when he knows he's not the right person. So
Yeah.
exactly,
Even
exactly.
Yeah.
Google,
So
even Google
is
founders did
and
that, right?
yeah, exactly. What's his name?
Yeah.
This guy who then become Alphabet, the chairman, was uh, in the Google, the first CEO. Oh gosh, yeah,
So
just skip my
Yeah.
mind.
Mine
Anyway,
no,
also.
so
was it Smith? No,
yeah, so Eric Schmidt,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So that's a good
It's Eric
example.
that's
And
Schmidt.
what I
you,
thought.
as
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
for the lesson that you can learn from startup is that we may not necessarily be the right person. We must acknowledge it's about humility.
Mhm.
It's about developing high level self awareness that we
Yeah.
may not be the right person for that role for that time. But in many organizations, even large organizations, they okay, you're the anointed successor. I know everything. I'm, lack of humility. So in what we
Yeah.
can learn, and board, you're right. If you look at many organizations, the board will decide, yes, who are and usually they look at inside talent, which is right. I always believe
Mhm.
to build and buy. In other words, how can we develop the talent within the organization? And this is to demonstrate to the people within the organization that we believe in you. We provide the opportunity, we provide the right culture to thrive, to
That's interesting.
excel. But there will be time when we do not have the right set of leaders with the right set of competence, or the right leaders with the right set of competency. Therefore, we need to look from outside. So the question that you asked about disruptive
Yeah.
leadership, this is what is
Right.
lacking today.
Yeah.
But the good news is that we can develop them. And I've done it in Malaysia, Singapore, India, China. I've done
Gotcha.
many times and it can be done. The question is, are you prepared to invest? Are you prepared to challenge the status quo? Are you prepared to be able to disrupt your thinking? Now, exactly. So I said
You
that
also have
number
to
one.
admit first, right?
Well, I mean, I
And
think this
then
is a very this is a very I mean, it's very obvious. I think, right, with multinational organizations, they're ingrained in their culture. They got their values, and then disruption comes, and you already have all your succession plan already ready for everyone that's going to come up. But the disruption
Yeah,
changes all that planning, and this is exactly what you said. How do you have to look outside, and when you look outside, the outside, champion coming in has got to turn this behemoth organizational engine and culture into the culture that he wants
you know,
overnight.
it's interesting, Omar, as you were sharing that, the situation scenario. I'm reflecting, and uh, it just dawned on me that something, exactly similar, same situation in Bangkok, one of the largest institution, and you have they brought in, it's an education institution, they brought in an American. Interestingly, is a U.S. Marine, a very senior officer for the U.S. Marine, and style of leadership. I mean, this guy read my book, called me up, say, "Prof, can you, what I've read about the VUCA, in the U.S. military college, we went through that, and I look at your situation, your examples you give, and I'm still struggling. Why? I said, why? You are very senior, and these are. I'm talking about special forces. This is very special force, and special forces senior officer. And he was telling me uh, that the culture is one thing. Yes, there's a different in culture, but I'm talking about the organizational
yeah.
culture, not the national culture. Organizational culture, when you come in, and you try to disrupt the way of
Yeah.
thinking, there's a lot of resentment, not only resistance, but I'm talking about resentment. Oh, you have
Yeah.
a foreigner, you have this someone from outside. But
Yeah.
situation is this, we need this. We need to jolt. We need to create this uh,
Yeah.
disruptive environment where people start to be awakened. Oh, wow, okay, now we need to do things differently. And I, yeah, exactly. And,
Yeah.
and sometimes,
Wake them
yeah,
up
and I
first,
blame the board.
because they're on
Now, when I
auto
say I
drive,
blame the
right?
board, because sometimes the board set the
Yeah.
tone. While the CEO and the C-suite leaders run, the senior executives run the organization, the board has to give the guiding philosophy. It has to encourage, has to set the tone. That's why I think the role of board today is very different than what it used to be. So today, from a governance into more a partnership model, and trying to help and support the CEO and the C-suite to drive the organization in a very disruptive world together. They have to, and the board members themselves need to understand the world that we are in here. The disruptive world is very different. They themselves need to be trained to develop their mindset, because when you look and you present paper, when the CEO present a proposal, the strategy at the board level, the board member must be able to challenge, understand,
Yeah.
provide that guiding philosophy. And you cannot perform that role unless you understand, and you need to get the cognitive readiness, your mental agility in place. That is what is missing today globally, whether public, private, NGOs, NPOs. This is sorely missing. And also in religious organization, we're talking about the church, the mosque, the
Yeah.
synagogue, any major religious organization leading with large follower. How do you disrupt? How do you bring about a change, and without losing the mission or vision of the organization? But how do you create a follower? How do you change a followership? And that is what is happening today. And so as what I said, the pandemic is a blessing, and you can see, yeah,
You know that you did mention that we talk about the board and and if we look at the board and organizations and the financial sectors that we look at, they don't like disruption. You know this. People don't like to take chance and risk with money, right? And this is who's guiding a lot of these organizations, right? So in a sense, you know, they're trying to hold on to a little bit of a something that they know and for sure, but the disruptive technology that we're living today is surpassing a lot of the control that used to be there. It seems like,
There's two
yeah,
elements to that, though, right? One is the
yeah,
yeah,
financial, which is you have to deliver quarter over
absolutely.
quarter. But the other element is, hey, I'm comfortable changing status quo might affect my company's current income
Yes.
streams, right? And so taking a risk means risking
yeah.
everything I have, including my own job, right? And
No,
and I'm
actually,
not sure you're running into this.
You brought a very good example of the financial services, and let me tell you, organizations like CT, Goldman Sachs, investment banking. You're talking about retail banking globally, Standard Chartered, human HSBC. All these organizations are today reevaluating
Yeah.
how the blockchain technology is going to transform. Now, the
Oh
reality is
yes,
this, whether we like it
absolutely.
or not.
Yeah.
Of course, see what is very sad when I talk about blockchain, the first thing that everybody will think about is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is only one application of
Yeah.
cryptocurrency. There are 5,000 or more in recent research of cryptocurrency, but happened that Ethereum, Bitcoin, because of today news, look at where Bitcoin is. But the application of blockchain technology
Yeah.
is huge. And in the financial services, it's going to have
Yeah.
profound impact. And we have seen how the
Yeah.
blockchain has transformed the logistics. We have seen in healthcare, and I think it's going to transform all
Yep.
industry. But in financial services, what we need to look at how, and we have seen the fintech. There are many or insurance called insurtech, and there are many startups. But they are taking a long time because there's a lot of I would say the ecosystem, the support structure is not there
Yeah.
from the government, from the various stakeholders. But the financial services is going to be disrupted further. A good example in Singapore, in my book, in chapter 5, I talk about a DBS Bank. DBS Bank is the world leading for 4 years in a row, the best digital bank. And Piyush Gupta, the CEO, was from Citi back in before 2009 when he took over after the GFC global
Gotcha.
financial crisis. He came in, he totally destroyed, and his mission is simple. While we stick to what we do best, DBS being a local Singapore bank, a regional bank, but we want to transform and disrupt the financial services before we have been disrupted by the platform, organizations like Alibaba and many other Chinese,
Right.
players. This is an example of disruptive mindset. A leader, Piyush Gupta from DBS Bank in Singapore, he went to the board and says, look, we anticipate, and this was back in 2009, 2010, after the GFC, and he's anticipated that, look, we're going to face this down the road. We can have people at Alibaba coming in and trying to disrupt and go into our space. So what do we need to do? We have to go and decide to be ahead of the curve. And that's what they did, and they transformed. Now, what I
Mhm.
believe the financial services industry is yet to see the full disruption. The central bank, the you call it the central bank, uh, CBDC, the CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency, CBDC, where you look at the World Bank, you look at the Chinese government
Okay.
is pushing very hard, where you have the support of a digital currency. And as I said, I'm not talking about Bitcoin. I'm talking about the cryptocurrency and the application of the blockchain technology into, yes,
As an official currency
because
of a
of the trust,
state. Yeah.
the
Possibly. Yeah.
secured, the trust,
Yep.
the manner.
I like that. Trust is
Yeah.
the most
But
valuable
but
thing
but
these
right
days.
now is yet to be accepted, and because why? A lot of the financial sector, a lot of these key players are trying to not. A good example, you look at Facebook Libra. A lot of reason. If you look at Facebook, forget about Facebook. Look
Hmm.
at the
Hmm.
concept what Facebook trying to do. And the most important part
Yeah.
of that philosophy of that digital currency is cutting down the transaction cost. And what we are seeing is that the big, large bank institutions are making too much money. And this is something which I think need to be disrupted. And it will happen. It will happen. It will be
That's an
exactly.
income stream they
That's
already
how
have. They don't want
That's
to
yeah,
that's
exactly.
disrupt it.
You're right.
dangerous
That's
for
the
them.
main source of income.
Yeah.
And you look at retail banking, and DPS has
Yeah.
disrupted that. In India, DBS Bank is offering before the acquisition of the local bank, but there's a distress. But for the last 3 4 years, DBS Bank went to Indonesia, on a digital platform. Very successful.
Hmm.
Hari, and what I'm hearing, or what I'm kind of getting a theme is like, you can be a disruptive leader, right? But don't lose sight of the vision and the mission of
Yeah,
the why are we here. I don't think the why changes. The
correct.
how is what's disrupting. How we do it today is what's
Absolutely.
changing, not the why. So if you're very clear on the
Yeah,
why and the mission and the vision, the how
Yep.
is where you need to be good at. In the disruptive agility is what you're mentioning, right? I mean, this is kind of what I'm
absolutely.
what
No,
I'm
I think Omar,
hearing.
you really hit the nail. In the hit. What you say is exactly true. We need to be focused on why we exist. Your mission, your vision. Of course, you need to reassess. You need to reinvent from time to time, looking at that is it still relevant.
Hmm.
Your guiding philosophy, your values may change, but then, as you correctly mentioned, and I always ask this trick question when I talk to client consulting, and when I'm giving advice coaching, where are we today? Looking at your own business, where are you today? And this is the pandemic is a good starting point. I ask them, where are we today? Where do you want to go? Question is, how do you get there? Where are we today? We need to reflect over the last 10, 20 years. And you look at the pandemic, last 1 year is good lesson. We are all miserable. We are not prepared. And what lesson can we learn from the pandemic? A lot of lessons. Where are we today? Because of what we have not been prepared in the past. Where do you want to go? That's where, Omar, you're right. So let's bring your reason for existence, your vision. Is it still relevant? If not, what do you need to do to reassess and then decide? And then how do you get there is the most important part. Because if you define the first part is easier. Where we are, you do your SWOT analysis, you do your analysis. Where do you want to go? Yeah, do your goal setting, do your balance, all your objective setting. Easier. But now, how do you get there? As a CEO, I always tell my team, and the same thing I advise CEOs, it's easy to come up with the strategic goals, business strategy. You talk about porters, it's easy. I mean, honestly, I've been teaching this for so long. It's easy. I'm telling you from personal experience as a practitioner, as a CEO, several organizations over the last 25 years, and currently also running organizations and also advising other CEOs. The biggest challenge is execution. How do you get people rally behind you to execute? That is where I talk about disruptive leadership, because many of them are not able to demonstrate what it takes to be successful in the future. What get you here will not get you there, as Marshall Goldsmith, the legendary executive coach who endorsed both my books, and he says very clearly that what the skills, the competency that bring you to success today will not necessarily will bring you to be successful in the future, unless you are humble enough to acknowledge, yes, I do not have all the answers. And this is where I advocate a concept called reverse mentoring. Reverse mentoring means I learn from people who are age of 25. I mean, tell you, I got three mentors. Two are, and for over the years, they are called master mentor, who helped me. They are in the 80s. One of them is 85. One is the 82 in the US, who helped me. Also, one is in the UK now. Who moved to UK. One's in Texas. The other one is in Kent in UK, helping me to reassess myself. Even I need that support system. Then I have a 26. And I have then
It's a
wait,
very
Omar, I have a
interesting concept.
26-year-old mentor who is guiding me, even at my level, to help me to understand the latest technology. What is general machine learning? I know you know AI. I know you know what is machine learning. What about general machine learning? Talk about general artificial intelligence, where we're talking about how do we move to the stage where we talk about robotic applications. People always talk about the lack of the thinking, the way, the creativity, the empathy, and all that. But now there's a lot of research into that, into general machine learning, and then the cobot, collaborative robotic in manufacturing, huge application. You look at the Japanese company,
Hmm.
German, they are now looking at how we
Yeah.
can have. In my book, I mentioned about the collaborative robot and the industry 5.0, which now is in the in the healthcare industry, the nanotechnology. How do we apply nanotechnology to bring in an ability to deliver services, solution, healthcare uh, treatment on a individualized basis, what we call mass customization, one on one. For example, if you are a diabetic patient, how can you now have a treatment, an insulin, or any other medication that can be individualized to that person based on using data analytics, looking at the person's history over a certain period, and provide that. And that is the future. And this has already been done research as I say, in the pharmaceutical healthcare. But you have not seen that. This is industry 5.0, where you talk about customer centricity to the extreme. But the concept is not new. Omar, hurry, it's not new. Actually, Michael Dell did that in 1980s when he came out with the PC mod. When we're talking about the mass customization. But of course, that time technology, yeah,
Yeah,
but the
Yep.
I
technology was not
remember
there. What
that.
he did is, okay, he used the internet to the supply chain was disrupted, and he provided that ability for you to choose what you
Yep.
want. But today is very different. Today the technology is there, and I see the way forward. We're going to get after the pandemic and the the era of the post pandemic. What we can see in chapter 10 of my book, you guys, you read the way forward is that we're going to see intense disruption from a digital transformation, the new way of working, the changing world of work. The gig workers is going to disrupt the way work is going to be delivered. The future of work is so different in the next 5 to 10 years, and a lot of company is not ready. Now, this is I'm very worried because we are going to be really
Mhm.
be left behind. So leaders, organization, government, institution in Singapore, the government is very proactive in trying to provide support, infrastructure, guiding, all sorts of support to get people to ready for the change of changing world of work. This is coming.
I think Hari, we Hari and I, we did something on this, and I think I read this a little bit
Yeah.
in the book as well about the the fear, right? The technology and the change is happening very quickly. The structural adjustment, right? That needs to take
Mhm.
place. The retooling, the jobs of the future. People are very, you know, concerned. Am I going to be able
Correct.
to survive in the future? Should I just go find a skill? Or am I going to be a coder? What do I need to be, right? And this is the biggest concern with 5.0 all the way up to 6 7.0
Mm.
as we start to get further along this digital journey.
Omar, you asked a very good question. What I in my book I talk about knowing, doing, gap. What you just expressed, many of the CEOs, CHRO, business leader, they know. They know. Knowing, doing. They knowing about it and doing something about it is different. So what you just mentioned is a dilemma that many organizations face before the pandemic. The blessing, okay, one of the blessing of the pandemic, I see it accelerate the digital transformation. We work from home and we're looking at people not to make, in the first 3 6 months, drastic adjustment, leveraging on technology. Zoom become adverb. Zoom is now looking at how
Yep.
video. I've been doing that video conferencing since, to be honest, Skype. I mean, we're talking about the early 2000, and especially during the September 11. You see how travel disrupted people. It's not new, but the pandemic has created that need for people to
Mhm.
reassess what do we need to do to get ourselves ready for further much more disruption down the road. So the challenge is now to knowing it is good. Yeah, we know we realize self-awareness, self-realization. Question is, what are you going to do about it? So what you just mentioned about, to reskill, upskill your the leaders, and all the way from your ground stuff, from the operational stuff right up to the board level, we need to reskill, upskill, a new competency to help them to be prepared. And this is what is lacking, and this is what has been missing when we talk about digital transformation. The industry 4.0 been around for a long time. If you look at the what makes, in Germany, as you know, in the German use the word industry 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution been around since the early 2000. But it was Klaus Schwab, the chairman of World Economic Forum, who wrote the book of Fourth Industrial Revolution, who since to a strong proponent of that disruption of technology into business, into government institution, and people begin to start be aware of it. The question is, we need to do now, and it involved the government, it involved the businesses, it involved the union, it involved the other stakeholders in the whole ecosystem. The non everyone has to come together.
So
Yeah,
everyone has to be involved. So this is not just a one fix. This is a
exactly. And
full effort
now's the time,
by
because
many
we don't do
stakeholders.
now. We are waiting for the post-pandemic. We need to ready now as part of the preparation. Harry, Omar, now's the time to take stock and do it now. It's not too late. now to prepare for the new normal in the world of changing world of work or the future of work in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great suggestion. I was also going to ask you, can you talk to us about the two books that you wrote and maybe a brief
Yeah, yeah. Give
on,
us a
Sure.
little where we can find it. And
just a little bit of a
Yeah.
teaser
So the
and
first
where
book is
our listeners
transforming
can
the next
find it?
generation of leaders for the fourth industrial revolution. Basically, both books are found in Amazon. It's very or in Barnes and Noble, and you can Google it. It's available in Business Expert Press, which is the New York-based publisher. It's available worldwide. The first book, the 2019 book, Transforming the Next Generation of Leaders for Industry 4.0, focuses on how organizations can prepare a pipeline of a sustainable pipeline of future leaders to be able to manage the challenges or navigate the
Okay,
challenges of the industry 4.0 with highly volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. The VUCA world. So, how do you manage
ambiguity. Yeah.
people to be ready for that world? And it's about the competencies and looking at preparing the systems, the structures, and helping leaders to understand the best practices approach. So that is more for leadership, preparing the leaders, the system processes for Industry 4.0.
got it.
The latest book, which is called The Leadership in Disruptive
Yeah,
Times, was released in end of July 2020. When I started writing that book was after the 2019 book, the earlier book, and the publisher told me, look, hey, why don't you look at the disruption caused by the digital transformation? What are some of the challenges? What are
I see.
organizations facing? So I was writing since July, August 2019. So when it come to January 26th, the publisher contacted me in New York, says, look, hey, Prof, there's something happening here in New York, as you probably know about this new virus, the nCoV. Those before we talk about COVID, the old name is, SARS-like virus, nCoV 2019. So, Prof, can you look at it and then give us some advice? What do you think? So I contacted my friends in China, in Hong Kong, and I got doctors' friend when I was doing SARS research. So they told me, yeah, this looks like, when for Chinese government to close Wuhan, or a place of 60 over million, to close, I mean literally block, that is serious. And there's immediately repercussion on the global supply chain. So Wuhan is where we look at the heart
Mhm.
of the manufacturing center of the world. You look at many of the parts, everywhere is within the Wuhan province. So what I did was I started doing some research, and I found that, yes, this is going to be, and this is before the lockdown. This is before Italy, before, you don't forget about US is much later, but before, other country like Singapore, Hong Kong, and
Right.
the others. So come to March, I realized one thing. Wow, this is serious. So what I did now, I extend the second book. I extend the research from a disruption caused by digital transformation to look at disruption caused by unforeseen event, or at the time it was unforeseen because of pandemic. It can be other events, could be climate change, could be,
Right.
and I think the climate change is going to be a big disruptor, and believe me. So, but for now, exactly, yeah,
Or even
exactly, yeah,
trade
yeah.
disputes, right?
You look at the
That's
Chinese.
also coming.
Actually,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
when I was doing this research, I was reflecting on the Brexit. No one would have thought that the Great Britain is going to be out of the European Union. That is actually a black swan
EU.
event.
Yeah.
Oh,
No
yeah,
one would
yeah.
thought a person like Donald Trump will be elected the 45th president of the United States. And everybody, even myself, I bet on Hillary. And she was in Singapore. I met her. She was at the time the U.S. Secretary of State. I was a guest, and I was the chairman of the American Chamber, the Human Capital Committee. So we had a chance to interact. That was the last year as the Secretary of State before she announced a nomination. So she was in Singapore, farewell tour. And I said, this is the lady. And not because of anything else. I look at, the American is right, is the right time. Right time. We had a black president, African American president. We are ready for a female president. And I was so convinced until the night on the 4th of November. And I was watching, I was so convinced when I see the announcement that there's no fireworks. And I know then, and I see, the sudden silence from Hillary came. I go, gosh, I think this is going to be a moment. This is going to be real disruption. You're going to see when Donald Trump is elected. And true enough, and I say when Donald Trump is elected, we're going to see interesting. And then it's a disruption at the global level. And we look at how the US.
Yeah, that's one way that the political side of things can really disrupt business as well as a variety of things,
Correct.
right? Like the health crisis, you name it.
Yeah.
They're going to keep
So
coming, as you mentioned,
yeah, so
right?
let me
They're
just
just
end
going to
up
keep
and
coming.
so the second book will focus on digital disruption, digital technology. Then I include three chapter. Chapter 2 and 3 is on the pandemic, the
I see.
disruption caused by pandemic, and chapter 10 is about the new normal post pandemic. The
Hmm.
rest, chapter 1, chapter 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is all about digital transformation. How do you lead a team? How do you prepare your team? How do you prepare future leader? The chapter 6 is about the culture. How do you put the culture that is ready to take on the framework, correct, the framework of the
That's a
digital
big one.
disruption culture.
That's a
Chapter
huge.
6 is more important, but how do we prepare leaders, what I call the disruptive digital leaders of the future? That is where the framework that the six competency, Hari, that you talk about, that we develop. And one of the competencies is very clear,
Hmm.
is what we call the disruptive mental agility. And the rest are all agility, resource agility, the
Hmm.
people agility, the innovation agility, and all is about agility driven. How do you, and the change is so immense. You look at what is happening with the industry 4.0, and people realize that now. And the good news, as I said, the blessing, as I said, of the pandemic, people acknowledge they have been putting on hold the digital transformation too long. And in my book, I talk about examples why we need to do that and how. It's not only what and the how. The framework. If you look at the review, the endorsement by
Hmm.
worldwide, the book talk about the toolkit, practices, framework. It's a how to do. It's basically you take the book, you can give it to CHRO, you give to the CTO, you give to the CIO. They can they know this
Yep.
is not about technical. They know the technical stuff, but this is about the how to do it, the people side of it. How do you prepare? How do you create a culture? How do you create the environment that thrives with agility, the change, embrace change? It's about accepting the fact that we have to change the way we work, we have to change the way we lead people, we have to change the way we manage our customers. And digital transformation is three things. Very clearly, it's about customer centricity. It's all about the customer, and is not the number two. Is not the
Hmm.
responsibility of the CIO or the IT or the technology department. Is the responsibility of every single one of the leaders. Everyone is involved. And third,
Yeah.
digital transformation is about creating value, what it means for the stakeholders. So that is the
Hmm.
mindset we need to change
Yeah.
about when you talk about
Yeah.
digital transformation. Hey, it's not, no, it's not my problem. It's not, I'm not concerned. I'm only doing operation. I'm doing stuff.
Let CIO figure
Yeah,
it
yeah.
out. Let
It's
the
Yeah.
it's it's
CDO figure
Yeah,
it
everybody.
no,
out.
no.
Everybody
When you
needs to
started
come
with,
together.
first, if
Yeah.
you look at the trend, there was a very beautiful article by MIT, Sloan School of Management. There's an article talk about, the back, you're talking about the digital transformation, the initial for the responsibility, we always talk about the CIO, yeah? I mean, initially, and then you shift to, the CMO, because the chief marketing officer, oh, they are the one going to talk about customer. Hey, how do we transform? If you look at Starbucks, as in my book, I talk about Starbucks, the digital flywheel, how Howard Schultz,
Yeah.
ensure the Starbucks is actually a customer driven organization. It's not a digital driven one, it's a customer driven, but using technology to drive. And then if you look at, and then after the CMO, then you came the CDO, chief data officer, then you have the chief digital officer. But today, and then,
Yeah.
uh, well, I'm
They're
not sure
passing
they're
the
passing the
buck.
buck. I think it's about misconception about, they're trying to figure out who actually, correct, who owns the accountability.
Who's the right person?
And the
Yeah.
accountability, Hari, Omar, lies with the
Yeah.
CEO, because you are driving the organization. You should be accountable. Now, they actually
Yeah.
implementing it, of course, carrying out can be whether the CDO or whoever it may be, doesn't matter, but they have to work together. They put aside the power play, put aside the political. The question is, you need to move, and this is a good example of DBS Bank again, and Microsoft. In my book, in chapter 7, I talk about Satya Nadella. I adore him. I want to interview him. I did I read his book called Hit Refresh. Fantastic. And my son, my eldest son, was a manager with LinkedIn. Now he's moved to Zoom, but he had a chance to to interact with the senior leadership of Microsoft and also with Satya Nadella through video, and he interacted with the during the town hall and so forth. And as you know, LinkedIn is part of Microsoft, and what the fantastic guy.
Right.
I heard of Satya. I read his book. I follow him, but he's the best CEO ever for Microsoft. He has transformed Microsoft. The third CEO, I'm not saying Bill Gates. Bill Gates is a different, is a founding CEO. Is different set of different leader compared to Steve Ballmer. And you look at Satya Nadella, is a leader that we all can learn how empathy, how he used the disruptive competency, what I call the
Yeah,
empathetic listening, empathy to transform. And the digital transformation of
that's a good point.
Microsoft
Yeah,
today is, yeah, it's his success. His
it's
success.
significant.
He did
Absolutely.
it,
Yeah,
and he personally took charge.
yeah.
That is what the role is.
And that's a great example because
Mm,
the actual styles of leadership
mm.
is very different between Steve Ballmer,
Yeah,
Bill
yeah.
Gates,
And
and
But it's a
yeah,
Satya,
people. So
right?
Bill
And
absolutely.
it's
Gates,
just it's
yeah,
very
Bill
evident
Gates is
in
a
how they even
technology.
come publicly,
He's a
right?
innovative. He's a truly, he is a thinker. And you have Steve Ballmer who jump around the stage. Jumping around. He's more a business. Yeah, enterprise.
His
Both
energy.
are not
It's
saying all of
energy.
them important.
Energy.
All three combined. Steve Ballmer is a more
Yeah.
business commercial guy, and you have here, yeah, exactly. And but here you have the third
Showman,
CEO,
right?
Love
Satya
it.
Nadella, and but he's a insider. He's been around for a long time, Microsoft. He understands. But the way he articulates, I've not met him. I wanted to meet him because he was supposed to be in Singapore in March, because of the pandemic. He was in Australia in January. He's supposed to come over, but he did not make it. But I want to meet him, and I admire him for one reason. This is he listened very well. Of course, you must understand his family, the personal circumstances of Satya Nadella, the tragedy that he faced with his son Zain, his daughter, the learning disability, and that really changed him as a person and as a leader, more empathetic with a
Yeah,
heart. This is where a leader needs to remember. People will remember you. You need to lead your heart. Be an authentic leader. Be able to demonstrate that you care for people.
mhm.
You need to change your style. Yes, situational leadership sometimes need to be tough to some people. The situation, like for example, the pandemic requires you to take drastic action, tough action, decision. But to do that, you need to have people behind you. So you need to be able to bring
Yeah.
people behind you during good times and people trust. So what is lacking in many organizations is the trust-based partnership between the CEO or the senior leadership and the people. So
Mhm.
empathy, authenticity is so important in the industry 4.0, because you need so much change is happening, and you need people to be rally behind you, to work with you, not only
Right.
the C-suite, I'm talking about all levels, so people trust you and we are willing to sacrifice
All
because we
levels. Yeah.
know that you have our interest at heart. Therefore we will go along with you. If you tell us that we need to cut things, we need to forego a lot of things, we know you will bring us back to where we were, and we will be with you. That is what is missing in whether big organizations, big MNCs, small, that's missing. The
Yeah.
trust-based partnership.
Well, trust is the foundation of any
And that's a
great,
digital
successful
currency.
organization. If you
Omar,
have a great
and I
absolutely.
yeah,
That's right. We
and
talk
I
about
use
blockchain. It's the trust. It comes back to blockchain. Do you
exactly.
believe
So
that?
I
It's the
always tell people
trust still,
trust,
right?
and I made a remark recently to in a grad school presenter. I said trust is the digital currency of the future. So many people don't understand what I'm saying. So you just hit the in the hit Omar. You talk about blockchain. That's exactly what it is. It's because of the way.
It's
Exactly, and the
trust. You
way the
buy trust.
structure, the
Yeah.
ledger, I mean, the structure of
Yeah.
the blockchain, the way is able to secured form of transaction, and I think that's where there's so much. And I'm so enthusiastic about the potential about the blockchain. But I'm sorry to say this: almost everyone I spoke to, whether government, private, leader, business leader, the first thing they tell me, Prof, blockchain. Oh my God, are you talking about Bitcoin? No, no, no. Or the other way around. Oh, Bitcoin. Yeah, yeah. I think blockchain. I think Bitcoin. We must invest. No, look at the money. We want to make money. That is all they think about. I said, my God, Bitcoin is one of the 5,000 of the cryptocurrency which leverage on the blockchain
That's right.
technology. The blockchain has been used right now
Technology. Yeah.
successfully in the supply chain, logistics. You look how he has transformed the logistic. Look at education. Look at the blockchain in healthcare. Look at how the blockchain can transform public service, secured way of offering services in the public service, in the government. So I'm very enthusiastic. I'm very enthusiastic. I believe there's huge potential, but we need to understand and disrupt our mindset that blockchain is beyond simply Bitcoin, beyond simply cryptocurrency. There's so much opportunity, so much potential that we can.
Yeah.
You know, your
Yeah.
passion for both leadership and the disruptive
Technologies. Yeah.
technology just comes through,
Easy.
right?
Very
So
easy.
well. And, our listeners are in the Industry 4.0 digital transformation leadership. That is our listener base. Um, what is, do you want to share a good way to contact you, whether social media or emails, if they have any questions, if they want to reach out to you for anything, because of course I want to talk to you for another
Oh,
hour,
Yeah.
but
We have to. Yeah.
we can't.
But it was been a good
Because
session. It's
we
been a
could
really good session. I have
Let
to
me tell you,
say.
we're gonna have to come,
Ari and
we're gonna
Omar,
do
you
this
Part
guys,
again.
I
two.
love this
Part
because
two.
it's very free flow. I enjoy it's a dialogue. I've done many interviews, TV, and I've done many, virtual interviews, and sometimes very structured. The newscast. I think what I like about the way you guys is very informal. So that's how I talk to my grad students, to CEOs, participants. So we can arrange another session with
Good.
more focus about an area that you look at, and I think we can talk about manufacturing or talking about a specific industry.
Okay.
That's fine. But I think what I like about you guys, you covered quite a broad area, and I think it's food for thought for your listener. You ask me how am I? I'm
Mhm.
contactable by LinkedIn, Twitter, many other. But I use LinkedIn a fair bit, so you can find me. My LinkedIn handle, is Bawani, so you can find easy. But what I think is important, if I were to leave one thing with everyone, is that please remember this. Uh, one thing is humility. Acknowledge that you do not have I do not have all the answers. I mentioned about reverse mentoring, where I'm learning from a younger Gen Y technology, someone he's a grad for MIT, so he's helping me, young grad, he's helping me looking at all the late, and I was amazed. And this younger Gen Y and Gen Z, which the digital natives, those are born between 1995 to 2010, that group, the Gen Z, this group, phenomenal. Gen Y, they are very familiar with the digital technology because they are born into the internet era. But no, the
Digitally
digital
native.
Yeah.
natives are,
Exactly.
yeah,
What
Gen Z, because
Gen
they
Zs?
are so used to the tablet, to the technology. They Let me tell you a story before the end. If you can, I tell
Touch
you a very
screens,
interesting.
right? Yeah.
2 years ago, yeah, I'll tell you something very interesting. I'm going to tell you something. You
Yeah.
guys, you guys are too young. I'm not sure. I'm just joking. But 2 years ago, I was invited to speak to in Singapore. No, 3 years. 2017. I was invited to speak to a university student. So I brought the topics about the path to the future, the digital revolution. So I brought these two things. I brought one is I brought a floppy disk, the 5 and quarter. You know what I'm talking about? You're very young, Omar. Maybe Hari will.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember the floppy.
and so
Yes, I
I
do.
got that.
I
So
do
I was
remember
fanning. It was
carrying
very
them.
hot
Trust
in
me.
there in the theater. So I did. I was fanning myself. So this is my time. The digital is how I store my CV. This is where I store is 51K KB. Bro, why I thought 51K? Not even one picture. I can even no. This is how I store, and we use application like Word Perfect. I don't even know Word Perfect before. Yeah, novel,
Yeah.
I
I
do
had to
know
make a
that.
stack
Lotus
like
one
this
two
many
three, Lotus one
just to
two
get.
three, and all that. So I was like, this is how. What the hell is that, bro? And then I took out the three and one half. The small A drive. The A drive floppy, much more sturdier, much more
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
harder.
yeah,
This is another version. Oh yeah, that one I think I seen in the museum. They're saying, but
yeah.
the floppy. I was so this is how you store data. Then I told them, okay. Then I on the sound. So I said, on the sound from YouTube. I Google it. I said, look. Yeah, what is it? It sounds like UFO. What are you showing us? Why are you playing this sound? I said, that's how I access my internet. What? Yeah, that's how my dial-up internet. So I need to dial up, 14.4, 28.8, 33, point 3. What? Yeah, and it takes us a long time to download one picture to send. And those days, you are sending emails, good enough, sending email. So, and I use Chameleon, I was telling them about Netscape
Yeah.
Navigator and all. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
AOL,
AOL
Yeah,
chat
you
rooms,
have
the chat
mail.
rooms, you
Steve
got
Case,
mail,
my
everything.
idol
You
at that
got
time,
it.
Steve Case, Mark Anderson. I don't know you know all these names. Mark Anderson. Do you know this name? Are you familiar? Go and Google. Mark Anderson is the founder
No,
of
no.
No, not.
Netscape, the guy who designed, very brilliant guy. Go and Google him, and then Steve Case was
Oh yeah,
CEO.
yeah.
AOL.
They took him out. I think
No one who
Microsoft
could
wanted to take him
believe
out,
that you
right?
have an organization like AOL can acquire Times Warner, Times Warner, and that's very interesting. Anyway, so just to end
Yeah.
this, so I played that sound. They were telling me, "Oh my God!" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I have to wait some time, and I have to wait and wait, and you got drop line, and use a dial up, use a landline." So you say you guys are born. I was telling the Gen Y students, you guys are lucky. You're born in the era of the digital. You're experiencing, and you wake up, and you only know the internet is there when the internet is disrupted, and you say, "Oh my God, the whole world is collapsed. Oh my God, my whole world. I cannot check my Twitter. I cannot check my Facebook. Oh my God, I don't know what's I don't know what's going to happen." And they got all like my younger niece and nephew, my son, the younger they all get so worked up. I said, during my time, we had all this thing, but we still survive. Life continue, of course, but we need to adapt. We need to adjust. So my story, the end, the thing that I want to end, by saying this: what lesson can we learn? So I think my advice to everyone, including myself, I always remind that humility, that we do not have all the answers. Number one, that
Mm.
you must acknowledge that there are others who can teach you. That's why the reverse mentoring. Second is about learning agility. Learn, unlearn, relearn. And this is where Alvin Toffler, talk about, when he wrote the book, the future way of, I can't find the title, but Alvin Toffler is a thinker, futurist. And I think what we need to do today is to unlearn, unpack what you have learned in grad school, because a lot of things has changed. We need to adapt and learn. And lastly, most important, after you've done the first two, you open up your mind, humble enough to learn. Then that's where your agility mindset. Yeah. Then you learning agility more, learn new things. And the third one, the most important for everyone, including business leaders, organizational leaders, non-profit SME, whether big, large government, is the knowing doing gap. So now that we know, we have learned, we disrupt our mindset. The question is, what are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? The doing gap implementation. And to do that, you cannot do it alone. The world today is very different. You need to acknowledge there are people around you who can help you, who can support you. You may be the best in what you do, but all of us has blind spot. All of us have blind spot. We need to ignore, even like Bill Gates, Eric Schmidt. You Google on YouTube, you find they talk about coaching. I always tell my CEO coach, some of them very, I've coached some, you can find the names on my website. They give me permission. I publish them, the testimonial from them. Some are top world-class CEOs. And when I first met them, they told me, why do do I need coaching, Prof? Because the board will tell me, can you come in and help this guy? He has a lot of value. We want him. We want him. He has so much, testing knowledge, so much technical capability, but the people skills. He really rubbed people in the wrong way. About social, emotional intelligence. Can you help him? So I always tell these people, no, you're good at what you are. It's good. But you need to acknowledge that you have blind spots. Just like me, we all have dark, what do you call it, the dark side. I have my dark side. I have my derailers, but I have two senior mentors who helped me to coach me, who have gone through very senior CEOs who in the 80s. My point is, we have to accept that we are all students for life. We
Mhm.
cannot stop learning, and I believe I will stop learning the day I die. And this is my philosophy. I communicate it to my sons, to my nieces, my nephew, to my students, to my staff, to everyone. Learning is for life. The day you stop learning is the day you're dead. And this is where we need to accept the three things: humility, learn, unlearn, relearn, learning agility, and fourth is knowing, doing the how do we close the how do we execute, how do we build a ecosystem, how. And chapter 9 of the book, I talk about the team, how you bring about team, how do you bring them together to execute your digital transformation strategy. You can't do it alone. You can have the best degree, get the best team from Harvard, Stanford, MIT, the best in the world. But you need a whole organization. The digital transformation today is about getting everyone on board and everyone understand where is the digital vision. Where are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to accomplish to bring the organization to the future? And the most important part of the digital vision is the customer. Never, never, never lose sight. And one quote, and this
Yeah.
is where in the 70s, when I was in the 80s. In the 80s, I learned something when I was studying about marketing. There was this tool, and it's a saying in marketing. They said that in supermarket is a big sign. I forgot where is the name, but you can Google it. A big sign in the US supermarket. The CEO put there, rule number one: the customer is always right. Rule number two:
Mhm.
if the customer is wrong, remember rule number one. So, so the customer is the cornerstone of digital transformation.
Yeah.
Never forget that. So this is my advice. As I said, can come and engage me on all the social media. Go to my website. A lot of free articles. What I've done, the book is, as I said, is available. Is sold by the publisher. I don't make any money. A lot of things I give back to the community. But what is important, I have got permission to extract every quarter chapter of the book into articles, and is available on my website. You can download free. It's published in the
I
US
see.
by HR.com, so I got permission. So you can, if those who cannot afford the book, like young students, and sometimes they cannot afford. But I wish I can give, I wish I can give to, like what I did to you all, the license. I wish I could give to everyone. And this I believe personally, because this is a commercial, the publisher is a yeah.
Yeah,
Restrictions on
exactly.
it. But I have to say, your website has a lot of
Yeah, it's
videos
got
and
good
articles that
material as
people could
well.
check
Yeah.
out,
I want
and
to say,
we'll
guys,
add
thank
a
you
link
so
to that
much.
in
I
our
really enjoyed
podcast.
this, and I want to say I would love to be on again in the future if you think there's a topic. We can have more specific discussion. But this topic, but the way I enjoyed this. I really thank you for this opportunity to share.
We
Yeah,
enjoyed it as
louder
well,
than
and I
here.
have
Yeah.
to say I've learned a lot on
Yeah.
this
This is a
session,
great
and so
session.
I was taking
Yeah,
some
me too.
notes. So fantastic, right? I mean, what were you saying, Omar?
Yeah, no, I was saying, yeah, I'm likewise as well. I got quite a few notes here, and I think our audience is really going to benefit from hearing some of the nuggets that were pulled out today. So I really appreciate that, and I guess Hari and Omar, we're
Thank
signing
you.
off, and thank you again for joining us on a spotlight on
Okay.
Digital Twin
Good luck,
podcast.
and God bless
Thanks,
all of you.
guys.
Take care. All the best. Bye.
Thank you.